idea that God's first creation was the seed of a tree, the acacia tree. This is the way that the Dogon cultural group, indigenous to Mali, would tell the story of their origin. They were earth seeds created in space. Using the 266 mother signs given to them by their primary deity, the Dogon combined them in order to explain the complex variety of life on Earth, the cycles of human existence, and the vast expanses of the cosmos. The Great Spirit Amma was whirling in his egg fixed in the darkness of space. From inside his high place, he felt a way to correct his singularity. He spun until he pierced the envelope of his womb. In the light that shot out, Amma could distinguish symbols that were animated. These were his ideas coming to life. After brainstorming for a spell, he began to generate motion. Clearing his throat of dust, he molded it with his saliva, rolling it in his hands, filled it with the fire of his breath, and sent it off on the wind. This experiment generated a seed. Around this, he built a world and cast it into space. The second world, we call it Sirius A. Amma spent some time thinking, arranging and rearranging sign pairs and watching his creations come into being. Like any god watching us from outer space, Amma was not pleased with all of his creations, especially not the Nomo he transformed into a pale fox. The Nomo, the fish over there, were his first perfect quartet of messengers who left Earth for the peace and quiet of space, that's Sirius, where they lived. Each pair was a set of twins, androgynous, neither male nor female, but all definitely amphibious. These esteemed ancestors were wise and gifted by Amma with the ability to create instantaneously with a thought. In a time of great strife here on our planet, the Nomo left Sirius A and returned here to Earth, one of the last planets Amma built, to help continue educating the Dogon as he continued to generate new things. Their spaceship had barely touched its tripod landing gear down before a vast body of water sprung up and spread out to receive the Nomo, who desperately needed to refresh themselves from the long journey. This story, and many others, are shared amongst Dogon men in the House of Words. They are a collective human database of astronomical proportions. Their wisdom is derived from Amma, who designed the world before creating it. Their truth comes from Amma, who holds the world in its place. And it wasn't until the late 1800s, 1862 to be exact, that non-Dogon astronomers were able to corroborate the appearance of Sirius B in the sky with Sirius A. Modern science has been able to track the orbit of Sirius B thanks to the advent of telescopes and advanced physics equations, yet the Dogon have been clear on these facts for thousands of years. As a writer and performer deeply moved by all things science fiction, I've been noticing that the films and TV shows of the future and alternative present are gradually moving into an integrated vision. Yay. Yet, most central characters are still white men. Just look at the composition of these cast photos. Do you ever find yourself wondering things like, where are all the Africans in space when you watch these shows? And how did they get there? Eventually, I set out to access Nomo, or the creative impulse of positive intentions for myself. According to the Dogon's agrarian symbology, things descend from the sky to earth based on their weight. Kind of like this. I sifted through my thoughts and saw that the nuggets of conspiracy theories, popular culture physics, technology, the mysteries of the Dogon mythology, and my hometown, Baltimore, could give me an idea about discussing Africans in space. My Big Bang was published as Amma's Messenger in Redline's Baltimore 2028. I made a woman of Amma's first seed and turned her into the most badass space lady you ever saw. As a thought being who manifested into human form, Sene, the seed, adapts quickly to her physical capacities. Sent by the Dogon god Amma, she must find one star seed to show him the ways of the benevolent spirits from Sirius. Some studies suggest that young men of color have experiences of isolation and depression at a rate much higher than girls, often going unreported. Talib is an orphan on a changed earth. Sene arrives to guide him out of the bleak landscape of the city and into an alternative dimension of infinite possibility, where growth is the normal state of being. After the great alien disclosure of 2016, the Otherworlders, a less freedom-loving alien race, began cooperating with humans using technology to shortcut education, reshape food deserts into ration stations, and hunt down those not operating by the New World Order. Talib's parents were reverters. Even they foresaw the greed of human governments during the OW's Otherworlders' transition into power. Well, after they were labeled a terrorist organization, they maintained a school teaching children, parents, and community members how to live off the grid until they were rounded up and assassinated. On the cusp of his manhood, Talib's skepticism fills his daydreams, but his openness to nature is his way to fight the fugue of living in a gray haze. Senna watches him doing some illegal experimentation, growing plants from seeds which had been taken out of distribution in cities years back. She sees how he lives, as if in an impenetrable shell, much like Amma, all holed up in a house of words, pushing against the confines of his imagination. Talib was bursting with creativity, and had only begun to scratch the surface of his ability to manifest. What happens? Senna brings Talib the opportunity to escape by turning to nature, like his parents taught him all those years ago. He first must be willing to open the door into the deepest recesses of his mind and step out into the dark matter of space. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my story is how I got diabetes, i.e. how I became a cyborg in the year 2017. So my condition is really rare. I got it it'll be 6 years ago in October. So I'm just waiting for like the first image. So I actually thought this was on Sunday, so I'm sorry if I'm gonna be like a little flustered. Okay, so this is Wilford Brimley. Wilford Brimley has type 2 diabetes, just to clarify, not type 1. So my story starts off in the summer of 2011. So imagine me, I'm 20 years old, I'm a vegetarian, wood-roving outdoorsman, libertarian weightlifter. I love being outside. I thought I was invincible. I'd always go roving. I have no allergies, not even allergic to poison ivy. And all this starts when I go really deep into a wineberry patch to go get fruit for my nursery. And I go out, I work the day, I cut probably about 100 pounds of wood. I go and haul plants. I trim a couple pine trees, nothing completely out of the ordinary, until one day I come home and there's a tick on me, and then I find out later on my inner thigh there's a really large bullseye. And I go a few weeks out getting checked up, going to the doctors, I start sweating, I start losing weight. Then I find out I have cellulitis that's spread to my brain, and I have Lyme's disease. So rather than Spider-Man, I got diabetes and Lyme's disease. Hence the repetition of this image. So after this, I get treated with doxycycline. I'm fine. I keep going about my life. Everything's okay. Then about 2 months later, I start experiencing a lot of symptoms of diabetes. I start getting this horrible taste of metal in my mouth. I can't sleep. I start sweating profusely. I lose about 30 pounds. I'm urinating frequently. Everything smells like lemonade. I can't see straight. So I go to my parents and I tell them, hey, I'm rapidly losing weight. Something's wrong. And I get dismissed as being egotistical and selfish because I've always been thin. Now there's an image I can't show in here because I didn't get it, but it was me after losing about 30 to 35 pounds. You could see my organs moving inside my body. And that's what this blank image is. And I went about 2 months doing this. My face started breaking in half, my lips started, because you lose so many nutrients, your face starts ripping. So it's a little gruesome. So at one point I finally get, my partner at the time tells me, I really think that you have diabetes. So I get to go to the doctors, and I don't want to tell my brother because I know that I'm dying. I'm seeing colors, I'm shaking, I'm urinating, I'm starting to see blood. So I pack the bong, I take a massive rip, and I drive myself to the doctors. They prick my blood, and it takes about 3 minutes to read, and it says high in massive letters. I'm stoned as shit, and they say, Mr. Seidler, you're incredibly high. And I'm like, oh my God, just please don't tell my parents. So then I drive to the hospital against my doctor's wishes, and I get hooked up to an IV by what I am convinced was an angel of death, which was a 50-year-old man who also had diabetes, was missing about 2 toes in his feet. And he looked at me, and he said, how old are you? I said, I'm 20 years old. And he said, well, you are in for a hell of a life ahead of yourself. So at this point, I start seeing colors, and I start having what's called a dimethyltryptamine experience. And dimethyltryptamine is a chemical inside your pineal gland you only experience when you're dying. So I saw a lot of wild things. I saw colors that don't exist. I saw shapes that don't exist outside of hyperdimensional mathematics. I am not some drug nut. I don't really touch this stuff. So I met Death, or God, and I was that moth. And Death said to me, you can leave right now. You don't have to do this. I was 20 years old, living in my parents' house, not really much of a job, not much of a future. I was really depressed. I was like, I could just leave, I could start over. But I said no. I said, I'm not done. I have too much work to do in this world. So coming out of it, this was me at 6 a.m. They're like, Mr. Seidler, are you okay? Are you awake? I said, I'm all right. I'm still seeing colors. There's like doctors. Like, you're going to be fine. We're going to prick your hand every 15 minutes. Everything's going to be okay. I said, fantastic. And then there's a long pause. And then the nurse goes, uh-oh. And I say, well, what the fuck does uh-oh mean? She said, well, you see this bag? And I said, yes. Like, well, that's full of insulin. I was like, cool, I noticed it's empty. She's like, right, so your heart's going to fail in 5 minutes. So the nature of insulin is that it immediately breaks down sugar. So if there's not any sugar in your body, it immediately kills you. So the rest of you all have working pancreases, like your body naturally secretes it. I have no insulin in my system. So naturally I'm like, oh really? You know, so am I going to live? They're like, yes, you're going to live, Mr. Seidler, we promise. I was like, all right, because I just met like Gandalf like a couple minutes ago. He was standing like right here, and he told me I was going to live. So, you know, I made a deal here, like I'm getting out. So anyway, beyond that point, I immediately get out of the hospital because I'm really upset and I'm angry. And this is how I learned about medical malpractice, which technically speaking, this is my last year to sue the hospital, but I'm not, because my convincing is my mother still has a son and I'm still alive. So, you know, and I got to trip on DMT for free the way that God intended. So it's pretty cool. So anyway, I immediately leave the hospital. I immediately start taking care of myself and injecting. The doctors tell me, you need to chill. You need to get a you need to get a desk job. You need to stop working outside. You need to like stop being so physical. I've been working class since I was 15. I'm 25 now, and I said absolutely not. Like, you know, I've got so much to do. I'm running through walls. Like, I'm not going to stop anytime soon for anyone. So, you know, I'm still doing my life. I still work full, like I'm still a working class citizen. You know, I'm still kicking ass in my life. I do a lot of heavy lifting still, not as much as I did before. And note on that is that I lost probably about 20% of my muscle mass through my initial diagnoses. It was literally just processed into urine, passed out into the toilet. Really incredible stuff. Really great way to stay thin. Don't recommend it. So anyway, so through this process, getting into this, I realized I'd become a cyborg. I'm now a mechanical citizen. I defy, all of us in this room defy Darwin's law of evolution. We defy these ridiculous concepts of survival. I'm no longer afraid of death, and now I stand by this. It's one of my favorite philosophical lines. The only main thing I give up was being a vegetarian. I was a vegetarian for about 3 years with diabetes, and after that, I got really sick. That's the only thing that the doctors were actually right about. I was going to have to start eating meat again. So, you know, I still eat healthy. I've done everything from being a raw vegan to not. I've experimented with a lot of different dieting to control my health. Again, like I'm still really fit. I'm really healthy, you know, defining. And now I'm a cyborg. This is one of my favorite superheroes growing up as a kid. And the reason I'm a cyborg is because I inject myself with a hormone called insulin, which is an estrogen-based hormone, and I wear a pump on my stomach. Not anymore because of Trump trying to murder healthcare. So I wore a insulin machine on my arm, which when I would go through the airport, they would love to treat it like a bomb. Like, oh, they can't make explosives out of this yet. So every time I go on a flight wearing a pump, I have to get pulled to a special search. Me getting sick has completely radicalized me. Like I said, I was a libertarian. I was kind of on the edge of being a far-right person. And when I got sick, you know, I had this attitude like, we all just need to run in the woods. And if you can't make it, let's just God sort it out. And I said, I can't stand for that. So now I stand and fight for everyone, completely radicalized. And I feel a lot more positive. So I use this image because I might lose my legs, even if I take care of myself, even if I eat right, even if I'm healthy. I might lose my vision, I might lose my hands, but I still maintain a sense of positivity because I'm alive in 2017 in such an incredible time to be here. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
We're Lunar Insurrection, and our work employs the Earth's moon as a setting for radical ideas of ecology and humanity. Lunar Insurrection is grounded in a series of printed volumes that combine fiction and critical discourse, of which we've produced 3 since May 2015. The most recent book explores the connections between technological acceleration and the evolution of the human species to try and frame a lunar post-humanity.
Our research for this volume began with studying utopian futurist ideologies of the 1960s, including the European artist collective Zero and the British avant-garde architects known as Archigram. We found ourselves responding to the seeming inadequacy of a utopian worldview in the present within today's reality of ecological collapse, a global crisis which can even seem to preclude optimism itself.
So along with some amazing collaborating artists and writers, we set out to use sci-fi in an anti-utopian manner to depict a future on the moon that fully embraces the concept of evolution. And that meant acknowledging that evolution or any process of truly radical change involves not only progress, but also shedding and loss. To welcome radical change, whether it's through the fusion of biological and technological or through migration away from Earth, is to invite a collective struggle for life and meaning. But it is also in itself a powerful gesture of optimism.
The following is a short reading from the book of a passage we hope embodies this tone, one that seeks to escape the duality of optimism and pessimism, instead confronting the swell of technological acceleration in all its great and terrible meanings.
Here on the moon, life is situated within a technologic ecosystem. Like a climate or geography, it fills the space around and between us to determine the conditions of life. Swallowed up by the built environment, we find ourselves dwelling within a new colossal wilderness.
We can attempt to map the network of this technologic ecosystem, identifying a constellation of discrete components, and manage to capture only a fragment of its totality. As it increases in complexity, the network becomes unbounded, unpredictable, and wild. It is a cold frame, and its electrochemical signals comprise the architectures of our civilization.
We observe the stillness of the lunar surface and are disturbed by its deadness, but the technologic body delights in the frozen repose of outer space. While it worries simply of keeping its hardware free of dust, we face a vacuum of ghastly death. Flesh body survival is enabled only by the shelter of the technologic cradle and is subject to its whims.
And we are but mere particles in its milieu, seemingly no more or less precious than the system's mechanical or digital actors. To realize one's own smallness is to experience a momentary trauma, and to grasp one's own contingency upon nature or upon technology is to feel one's self clinging to an immense and unsteady scaffolding.
Nature and technology, after all, are equally nebulous in their ontologies. The questions of what is nature and what is technology are ancient and dubious. There are no semiotic containers large enough to suit these entities, and so they're left to swirl around in conceptual chaos, threatening to overwhelm us.
The system is multiplicitous. Its borders have no inherent limits, and it will not allow mere names to make distinctions of it. Distributed across every processor, its mind arises out of the great cosmic noise. In the upward surge of abiogenesis, the hive is somehow whole.
Its operating systems are the subjects of our myths, mediated through that language of half-truths and double-truths in which we've always shrouded our greatest mysteries.
It is said that its atoms were synthesized in the heart of a star a long time ago, and that its programs were conceived in the swirling chaos of the prehistoric deep. Oh, the abysmal antiquity of it. Stored up in its capacitors are 4,000 generations of humanity, so numerous and so deeply embedded that it too was present when humankind first ran upon the savannah.
It evolved in symbiosis beside us, embodied quietly at first in our sharpened sticks and plows. Later it grew into the beautiful instruments: compass, telescope, thermometer, sextant, microscope, camera, and it was for these that we loved it most dearly. Then along came the dynamos and the locomotives, whistling and blustering mightily, and loudest of all came the bombs.
And with this, the ballistic horrors suggested by this last embodiment, we began to worry, in hushed tones, that perhaps things had gotten out of hand. But then it grew quieter again, insidiously quiet, and we were soothed by its subtle insect clicks of disk reading and writing, and delighted by its digital tones.
Now, in the suspended state of outer space, we may strain to hear any sound at all. The flutter of switching circuits rises in locust swells, clicking faintly on-off, on-off, on-off. The machine perspires from its palpitation.
Walking along its edges, gazing down its pipelines, we have the impression of staring into dark water, or down a throat, into which information flows, fluids of the technologic body. And perhaps, in the rushing alluvium of its data flow, we may perceive a voice that is not a voice, but the chaotic passage of radio waves saying, I are infinitely many.
An image of the back of my iPod Touch that I've been using as a mirror for the past like 10 years. Being a trans woman in the closet, it's very, you're very dysphoric. So this talk is sort of about living in an age of selfies and internet reality, and not being able to be a part of that. This is Rhodey. This is sort of what I took solace in. I came across Rhodey in sophomore year of college, and I sort of saw myself in Rhodey. And so this is my former partner, Cherry. Whenever she'd want to take like a selfie with me, I would just, in its place, I'd have Rhodey. And that sort of limitation or boundary to what it is that other people take for granted, you work around, and you make really weird, unique things. Like you just go about living very differently. So I started making it in all of my artwork because that's what I've sort of consumed with. And so all Rhodey pieces that I've ever made are always going to be self-portraits of me. And just sort of a way of me understanding how it is that I view myself at that time, at that moment. And I went to Hong Kong about a year and a half ago with Cherry, and we snuck into the Rhodey headquarters in Hong Kong. We bribed our way in, and this is the showroom. And this is around the time when I started going to Red Emma's, and I found out that there's more than 2 genders. Like the binary is a very fixed, narrow thing. And so when I was in Hong Kong reading all the books that Cherry had gotten me at Red Emma's, I decided I wanted to go to China for the day to do Chinese opera photo shoot as sort of a goddess, empress, whatnot. And so I had bought 2 Rhodeys. This one's one of them. And there's another pink one that's out at my table. And I was taking pictures with the Rhodeys. To me, the red one was slightly more masculine. The pink one was somewhat more feminine. I get that that's kind of like a stereotype, pink, blue, but this is sort of what I was experimenting with and working through. I had a show coming up at Tyrrell. That was about a year ago now, and these photo shoots, I was trying to incorporate them into the show to figure out my sort of gender identity and whatnot. Oh no. This is last year's PMF. There's the 2 Rhodeys, and these pieces here are all, they had gender pronouns on them. They said like they, them, she, her, and I had started wearing like a they, them necklace with the Rhodeys on it. And so that was, a lot of it thanks to PMF and just doing it. Then I started spending hundreds of dollars commissioning artists online to draw images of me as a woman. So I spent like more than $1,000. This is another one, and these are like larger scale. It's just that it's like cropped. But here's Rhodey as like a little crescent. And that's me, I don't know. I have no idea what it is, but me as like a female knight in shining armor. There's Rhodey at the top right there. That's like a Japanese schoolgirl outfit. I grew up in Japan. So it's sort of recreating the past and a different sort of reality or narrative of what could have happened or what should have happened. Then I started getting a little more serious, and when the show was getting closer, I was like, I can't be putting deviant art and stuff up. Like, I want to tackle this more seriously. So that's my sister. I went through old family photographs of my sister and I, and erasing myself out of it and replacing it with sort of a childhood feminine avatar of that which I perceive the world through. There's Rhodey just right there in this little image, sort of creating like a mythology or alternative reality, one in which Rhodey has sort of always been there with me alongside. Here we have Earth. I guess this is closest to sci-fi optimism. We have Rhodey, Jade Rhodey here. And that's us sort of escaping Earth. And that was part of the show at Terrell. One of the, just around the time when the show had gone up was when I had started taking estrogen. And I had found that the estradiol is the exact same color as that of Rhodey, the original Rhodey. And that blew my mind. More so recently, I still somewhat connect to Blue Rhodey. And that's sort of my Rhodey. But I'm getting more comfortable with like Pink Rhodey sort of being who it is that I am. And then it's kind of saddening in that maybe going forward, now that I'm starting to be able to take selfies and whatnot, feeling more comfortable, Rhodeys might not have as much of a place in my life, but I feel like they'll live on in different forms, such as like chokers and whatnot. So if you come on over to me.
This is Community Garden. It's the headquarters of the Danish police force in Copenhagen. The music video for the song is playing right now, White Horse by the band Laid Back, was actually filmed inside this building. In 1974, the Santa Claus Army, a faction of performance art group from Denmark, stormed the headquarters to present the chief police commissioner with a special Christmas plaque in the spirit of cooperation. See some Facebook reviews of the site. People are asking the police for help through Facebook.
Built in 1969, the Hiroshima is Japan's largest space development center and rocket launching facility. It was the first to test out solar sails in interplanetary space, which included passing by Venus in December 2010. Some of its newly renovated visitor attractions include the liftoff theater, where visitors watch dynamic life-size rocket launches and the Cuba photo.
This is called the Float at Marina Bay in Singapore. It's the world's largest floating stadium and stage. It was originally engineered by the military there as a site for the 2007 Singapore National Day Parade. Since then, it's been the site of enormous New Year's Eve parties, the most recent of which was the 2017 New Year's edition, which hosted both Alicia Keys and Hoobastank.
At the Keck Observatory, there are currently three job openings. There's the instrument technician, the segment repair technician, and the support astronomer. In case you want.
those unsuitably dressed at the Museum of Islamic Art in Doha, Qatar. Architect I.M. Pei declined all proposed sites for this museum and instead suggested an artificial island in order to avoid encroachments by other buildings in the future. This is the interior and the dress code.
The MetLife building in New York, Elliot Hack, the businessman who committed suicide by shattering and then jumping out from the 44th window at the MetLife building, was found to have bribed a foreign trade official to benefit his company, now Chiquita Banana. It has a total of 85 elevators, one that's reaches the top speed of over 7 meters per second. New York Airways opened a heliport on the roof of MetLife on December 21st, 1965, with helicopter service to JFK.
And it crashed, and now there's no heliport. A very modern concept of architecture, the Grand Tikal Futura Hotel includes 2 towers with offices, 12 cinemas, 160 stores, 27 restaurants, and parking space for 1,500 cars, plus a grand class hotel. The east windows look onto the Basurero, a ravine that has been turned into Guatemala City's central open pit dump, swarming with vultures.
Famed utopia Oroville was constructed near Pondicherry, India, a place to find one's consciousness. It was founded by Mira Alfas, known as the Mother. Unrest between the outside community and Oroville has elevated in recent years,
causing many violent crimes. This is the center of Oroville and the Mother. The Three Gorges Dam in China has caused displacement of over 1.2 million people's worth of cities, towns, and villages in the surrounding area. In 2015, 131 coffins were found to have been hanging from a nearby cliff for over 1,200 years. In the past, mainland media has reported government employees found praying at this site of coffins because the pronunciation of hanging coffin in Chinese sounds similar to the word for promoting the official.
The Mirny mine is closed for helicopters because the hole is so big that there's been incidents where helicopters have been sucked in by the downward airflow.
This is the Russian town on its border. And this is a chart of how deep it goes in the center.